Well, welcome back to the thought for the day for the 3rd of May. This is a continuation from yesterday's thought for the day. As you'll know at the end, I sort of briefly said that it got too long, so I split this in two. So I hope you enjoy the continuation of this thought of the day in regards to ecology and reconciliation. And this is just a bit more of a glimpse into Francis's own life as we read some of the passages from the authorized, well, not authorized, but the official sort of biographies of Francis that just gives us a little bit more of a glimpse into the man himself. Enjoy. And in understanding Francis and his way of seeing ecology, we can. I'm going to just quote some of Brother Ramon's, but also he quotes some good places from Francis's biographers in the world as well. So this is reading from Solano's First Life of St. Francis. And he's saying that in the 29th chapter you will find a loving, compassionate, and reciprocal and redemptive relationship described. And here's from Solano. How great a gladness do you think the beauty of the flowers brought to his mind when he saw the shape of their beauty and perceived the odour of their sweetness. He used to turn the eye of consideration immediately to the beautiful beauty of that flower, and that comes from the root of Jesse, and gives light in the days of spring, and by its fragrance has raised innumerable thousands from the dead. When he found an abundance of flowers, he preached to them and invited them to praise the Lord as though they were endowed with reason. In the same way, he exalted with the sincerest purity cornfields and vineyards, stones and forests, and all the beautiful things of the field, fountains of water, and the green things of the garden, earth and fire, air and wind, to love God and serve him willingly. Finally, he called all creatures brother, and in a most extraordinary manner, a manner never experienced by others, he discerned the hidden things of nature with his sensitive heart, as one who had already escaped into the freedom of the glory of the sons of God. For he was filled with love that surpassed all human understanding when he pronounced your holy name, O holy Lord, and carried away with joy and purest gladness. He seemed to like a new man, one from another world. And it is interesting, all the way back here in the 13th century, we have this idea that actually in calling them brother, he was, or imbuing the flowers, he preached with them, inviting them to praise the Lord as if they were endowed with reason. Well, we have scientists at the moment who are proposing that all things have some level of consciousness. One of the people I would invite you, and I'll link some of his work to in the description below, is a scientist who's looking at how there seems to be a consciousness that pervades throughout the whole of the created world, that For example, when a rat in a lab learns a new trick in one part of the world, it seems that all the other similar rats in other labs across the world start to learn the same trick much more easily. There seems to be this consciousness that pervades all of us, and that all of matter within the world may have some level of consciousness. So it's something to be considering. And so Brother Ramon continues, it is not simply that Francis looked at creation as an objective observer and taught moral lessons from the book of creation. Neither is it simply that he offered thanks for theological lessons learned about patterns, seasonal cycles, and morality, nor even that, like some of the schoolmen, he concocted philosophical arguments for the existence of God after the pattern of Anselm, Aquinas, or Descartes. No, Francis did not show interest in the God of philosophers. He actually entered into the creation and discovered God in a mystical relationship of love. This was not a pantheism in which the being of God resides in the natural order so that nature becomes God. We have learned a new word for an old experience. It is not the word pantheism, but panentheism. The being of God is not exhausted by creation, but rather dwells deeply at the heart of things created, manifests his being and glory through them, so that they radiate and reflect some of his mysterious, transcendent, and unutterable glory. And we then see that we've had a problem in our modern post-enlightenment, post-industrialized world, where we start to see humans and creation not in these terms of relationship and the relationship of love, but we started to use metaphors that describe both us and creation as resources or mechanical beings that so we have terms like human resources as a department, not seeing people other than actually what they can provide. And we see that with nature, that we've objectified it as a resource. Therefore, it's a resource with which we can exploit and take from. We don't have the metaphors prior to the Enlightenment anymore, where actually we are in relationship with creation. We see this is an ancient pattern that is in most indigenous religions, this idea of relationship with creation. And now we've developed these metaphors that are much more mechanized and much more about our the fact that we utilize everything as a resource, including other humans. And so, again, Brother Romain quotes, until the Industrial Revolution occurred, in the minds of most people in the so-called developed countries, the dominant images were organic. They were to do with living things. They were biological, pastoral, agricultural, and familial. God was seen as shepherd, and the faithful as the sheep of his pasture. People took care of the earth where they said to practice husbandry. Now we do not flinch to hear men and women referred to as units, resources, as if they were machines. It is common and and considered acceptable to refer to the mind as a computer, one's thoughts as inputs, other people's responses as feedback. And we're so enveloped in this culture, we often don't think about these things. But Franciscan spirituality causes us to step back and start to ponder these questions. Francis' organic relationship to the earth and all living beings is the key of our redemption and recovery in our polluted world. And Bonaventure speaks of Francis' primeval innocence in his experience of the restored Eden. Excuse me. And indicates that the key to the problem of disharmony and sin is the compassion shown by Christ in his redemption. So this is quoting Bonaventure. Compassion is all unveiling, and it filled the heart of Francis and penetrated its depths to such an extent that his whole life seemed to be governed by it. It was loving compassion which united him to God in prayer and caused his transformation into Christ by sharing his sufferings. It was with this which led him to devote himself humbly to his neighbor and enabled him to return to the state of primeval innocence by restoring man's harmony with the whole of creation. So these are just some things to ponder in our times as we've seen, and I apologize that this is a fairly long last section with regards to Francis. I might split it in two in an appropriate place. And I pray that we would take the example of Francis and to return to that primeval understanding which brings harmony between God, man, and the rest of creation, and brings us all into happy relationship of love.